George Soros lines his pockets with billions of dollars while the working person suffers. Yet no one is even talking about him in the media. No one is even willing to call him by name. They're not even willing to call him out on extremely questionable practices of betting on currencies while trying to influence them and their policies at the same time. Let me give you another example. Do you have that story? This was just handed me right before we went on. This just broke like 2 minutes before we went on. Big picture of George Soros. Soros may benefit from the White House natural gas proposal. No. Come on. Boy, Barack Obama and George Soros are the luckiest guy in the world. Or if you want to say it's all ethical, the most unlucky, because it sure looks bad. But nobody's looking into it. Soros, billionaire, investor, major backer of President Obama, stands to reap a windfall from the passage of legislation promoting a natural gas-powered vehicle. The White House unveiled a proposal on Thursday that would do just that. Blah, 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 blah. And guess who's a big supporter of that? George Soros. Guess who's a big investor in that? George Soros. Why isn't anybody looking into this? Why isn't anybody even talking about the history? Because he's done this before. We told you about the pattern. He gets all of his ducks in the row. He influences the policymakers. Then he waits for the right time to hit the media circuit and help nudge the currency he's betting against off the cliff. Watch.
What he does is, of course, George Soros never collapsed currency. What, I was just happened to be there in the crime scene, all 4 times. All I did was I wrote one of the things I did was I just wrote an op-ed piece right before the crash of all 4 currencies, and I said, I don't think I believe in this currency anymore in the direction of what they're doing, and so I'm going to sell. And then the world panics. I can't help if the world panics. You watch for that little op-ed piece from spooky George Soros.
Well, the world is on the edge, and last night the currencies started to tube in Europe. Now, he's got one piece out saying the end is near for the euro. And guess what? People started dumping their treasury bonds over in Europe, the bonds in the euro. So he puts this out, and then last night things start to tank. People are taking their money out because they know it won't last, and because George Soros says it won't last. The only thing left for Soros to do is take his own money out and tell everyone, I just think it's going to be devalued. That may not even be necessary because people know his pattern. Just like he did when he profited off the pound collapse in '92, and he caused it. Just like he did with the Asian crisis of '97. Just like he did with the Russian crisis in '98. In Russia, he hit the media and pounded home the theme that the financial markets had hit a terminal phase, and he called for a devaluation of the nation's currency as a solution. Here's the quote. On August 13th, Thursday, George Soros published a letter in the Financial Times saying that the meltdown, the Russian financial markets, had reached a terminal phase. He called for immediate action, including a devaluation and the institution of a currency board, a system fixing a nation's currency to the value of the richest trading partner. Such a plan would have taken away Russia's central bankers' discretion over their monetary policy. I wonder who he would have given that power to. So what is he doing today? What did he do in the last day or so? Well, he's saying that the EU has reached a terminal phase. Quote, we are facing an extremely difficult time, comparable in many ways to the 1930s, blah, blah. The Great Depression. The best case scenario is a deflationary environment. That's what I said. The worst case scenario is a collapse of the financial system. That's what I said. Why did he think that was lunacy a year ago, when he's obviously smart enough to make billions of dollars on monetary bets? But today, without even apologizing, he said more riots would hit the streets. He said governments, he feared, would use this as an excuse to implement strong-arm tactics and repression. And he's penned an op-ed for the Financial Times yesterday, where he laid out his solution to the crisis. Quote, I have a proposal, a plan that would allow Italy and Spain to refinance their debt by issuing treasury bills at about 1%. I hope you're buckled up and bracing for impact, gang, because the puppet master, The economic war criminal, according to the Malaysian Prime Minister, could be at it again. This might be the moment, nudging Europe off the cliff and then looking to celebrate another billion-dollar night. Billion-dollar night. All right, I want to go back to George Soros and what we talked about, because the choice here between us is really clear. The options in front of us are start to rely on ourselves, start to do the right things ourselves, start to become more self-reliant, start to just follow your heart, do the right thing, or continue to listen to the so-called experts who I think are setting up a giant trap for all of us. We have Richard Poe. He is the co-author of Shadow Party, how Hillary Clinton in the 60s radicals seized control of the Democratic Party. He is also, his other co-author is David Horowitz, a man I greatly, greatly respect, and Richard Poe has done so much amazing work on George Soros. Can you tell me, Richard, first of all, why is no one looking into George Soros? Why is this class warfare on everybody else except for George Soros?
Glenn, I would suspect that what happened to you when you went after George Soros may have a lot to do with that, because probably if anybody on network television, you, when you were on Fox News, went after George Soros more thoroughly and more definitively, and giving a lot more details about his covert operations overseas, which is the part of the story that is usually not told. You did more of that than I think anyone has ever done on network television. And of course, I don't know the inside story like you do, but it appears to me, and I think it probably appears to a lot of people in the media and out of the media, that you got punished for that. Now, maybe that's not true, but that's how it looked.
No, I will tell you that
outside.
I think I paid a huge price for going after George Soros. But I ain't dead. And quite honestly, I thought that was an option. You go after, I've seen movies before, and I thought, if I die, I think I said on the air at one point, if I show up dead, check Soros. But I didn't die. I paid a huge price, but I'm going on, and I think we are. I mean, Richard, I believe we've spoken about what we're working on another expose of George Soros and what he's doing now. He's a guy who seems to either frighten everyone or control everyone. Am I wrong?
He has tremendous influence, and he is a very thin-skinned person by nature. I've observed, I've learned. And he seems to have a lot of powerful friends in the government, in the intelligence community, in all kinds of walks of life, and a great willingness to use his connections for personal ends. I believe that Soros and his minions and his associates believe this is the end game. They want it to be the end game. Soros himself is 81 years old. He has been preparing for this moment his entire adult life. He predicted as far back as 1987 in his book, The Alchemy of Finance. He called for the, essentially for taking down the US dollar as the global currency of choice. He said that it was time for the dollar to go and to be replaced by some other currency. This was back in 1987. This was a long time ago. So
he's a guy who has he said that he feels the United States is the biggest obstacle to peace and prosperity in the world. How long has he ever liked America? Has there ever been a point to where he wasn't an enemy of our life the way we see it?
I have to believe Mr. Soros himself, because he has written many times that he always disliked America. He has written in many places in his books and articles that the only reason he came to America from England was to make money, and that it was his plan when he came here. I believe it was in 1956 when he first came here to work on Wall Street. His plan was to work here a few years, make money, and then go back to the country that he really loves, which is England. And this was always his plan, he says.
But then he destroyed England's currency. What happened there?
Well, he did, but he had friends in high places in England who approved of what he was doing. There were people in England who were very, very happy when Mr. Soros and certain associates of his ganged up on the British pound in 1992 and caused essentially a devaluation and collapse of the British pound. There were many people in England who approved of that for various reasons, some because they themselves made money, some because who were actually conservatives or self-styled conservatives. Some such people said they approved of Soros and he should get a medal because by crashing the British pound, he prevented England from entering the Eurozone at that point, which was in preparation. So there were all kinds of people in the British establishment who had different feelings about it, but it was the average Englishman who lost, I believe, a fifth of his savings through that devaluation, who really suffered.
Most people will say that because nobody else reports it, and so it allows it, the vacuum, the silence allows this to seem like a conspiracy theory, but it's not. He's done this very thing in 5 different countries. They don't understand how much money he is making right now. While everybody else is crashing, he's getting rich because he is in the White House over and over and over and over again, and all his people are designing these policies. He's not that much of a genius. He's controlling the policies, or at least suggesting many of the policies that make him rich. They will say, your friends will say, well, then what does he want? And they always fall back to an open society. If you tell your friend that he wants an open society, they may not say it, but they'll immediately say, well, I'm for an open society too. Could you explain a little what George Soros means by an open society?
I really don't know what he means by it. He claims that he's a follower of the philosopher Karl Popper, who coined this term open society. Supposedly it's all about democracy, free speech, all the things we all believe in enlightened and democratic societies such as this. But obviously, if these were if Mr. Soros's beliefs were as innocent as all that, then what would be the issue? Why would he be going around saying that the United States needs to be denazified, which is something he said a couple years ago? And he's constantly characterizing the United States as a country which has to be denazified, or in some way has to experience one of his bloodless coups, that has to be treated as he treated the Soviet Union, or as he has treated other totalitarian or oppressive regimes around the world. He continually characterizes the United States as a great threat to world peace and a threat to the open society. So we're the country of George Washington, the subject of your recent book. We're the country of the American Revolution. We're the country of the American Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We're the last best hope of Earth, I think, in the eyes of most people in the world. But in the tiny little intellectual world which George Soros inhabits, we are actually the greatest threat to peace in the world, and we are a country, an actual failed state in George Soros's opinion, a state so hideously evil, so dangerous, so out of control that we cannot, what's wrong with us supposedly cannot be fixed through the democratic process. It has to be fixed through the kind of covert interventions which Mr. Soros has used in places like Yugoslavia and Slovakia and Russia and Ukraine and so forth and so on. This is why Mr. Soros has targeted our country for these types of covert activities.
He is also at the same